I'm an ex-cop turned criminal defense lawyer, and I spent years as a police officer arresting and interviewing people. And now I defend them. And in almost every single case where someone asks me what they should say to the police, my advice is the same. Say no comment. Most people think that's terrible advice. They think if they just explained what happened, the police will understand. They think silence makes you look guilty. That is exactly what the police want you to think. In this video, I'm going to show you why the police want you to talk, what they do to get you there, and give a real life example of what can happen to a client if they decide to try and explain themselves in a police interview. Let's be clear. The police are interviewing you to obtain evidence in an investigation. And given the investigation has already narrowed its focus to you, they are after evidence against you. A police interview is not a conversation. It's not your chance to clear things up. It's evidence gathering. The interview occurs before someone is charged, but after police have narrowed the scope of the investigation to their main suspect. Hint, it's you. Let's use a possible scenario to help explain. A client was arrested for a theft from a shop on the 1st of May a year ago. He didn't do it, and he wanted to explain the mistake to the police. The police asked where he was on the 1st of May a year ago. I don't remember. Were you at the shop? I don't really remember, but I don't think I was. I'm pretty sure no. Well, we're going to show you some pictures. Can you tell me what you see? The pictures the police showed him were a still of a CCTV footage taken from the top of the rafters way off at the back. Some person pushing a trolley. He said, looks like someone walking around with a trolley. Is that person you? I'm not sure. It could be. Well, is it or not? Look, yeah, maybe it is me. Well, we've got a statement from someone who says they saw someone put an item worth $200 into that trolley and leave without paying. He says, I didn't do that. Before his police interview, all the evidence the police had against him was a statement of an employee who said that they saw someone and a grainy photo of some CCTV. And now they have him appearing to be deceptive, trying to say he wasn't at the shop, but then admitting he was. And then he goes on to corroborate the employee's version of events, that he was the person with the item in the trolley. To prove the charge, the police needed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the person who did the thing was him. It turns out the employee was mistaken about who they saw, but he's now admitted to the police that it was him. If he'd said no comment, his defense was a phone call with the prosecution to say, you can't prove identity, the charge should be withdrawn. But because he made a comment, it instead became needing to show that the employee was wrong, that it wasn't my client, that he didn't take the item, and now the police and the prosecution have this belief that my client is untrustworthy because he lied in his interview and tried to say it wasn't him and then admitted that it was. He gave the police an absolute freebie. That's only one example of the dozens of ways things can go wrong in a police interview. If you aren't a seasoned criminal, you're going to find the experience of being in a police interview room very daunting. You're going to be stressed out of your mind. Your heart's going to be running 1,000 miles a minute. Whereas the police are going to be calm, composed. They've had all the time in the world to prepare their evidence, their interview questions, and they walk into the room with a plan to get evidence against you. In an interview, everything you say becomes locked in. Trying to undo something someone said in a police interview isn't a simple matter of explaining a misunderstanding to the prosecution. It usually means needing to go to a hearing and making legal or factual arguments before a magistrate or a judge and jury. The version you give to the police in an interview becomes gospel. If you stuff up your explanation, miss out a key detail, don't understand the law or how a nuanced legal point like a defense needs to be proved, then winding that clock back from an interview is very difficult. Sometimes impossible. However, if you stay quiet, say no comment, and wait, you or your lawyer can give that same version to the prosecution later in a careful, considered, and well-planned way. Your lawyer can say whatever your version of events is much more carefully and safely down the line than you can in a police interview. If you make a comment, you might make an admission, give a version that's inconsistent with the evidence, miss a key detail, or open up a whole new avenue of police inquiry to find evidence against you, or any other number of a dozen missteps. You stand to lose a lot if you make a comment and get it wrong, and you stand to gain very little. In 99% of cases, the police have already decided if they're going to charge you or not before you go into an interview. and what you say isn't going to change that. In the 1% of cases where that's not true, you might be able to talk yourself out of a charge. You're still risking a lot. People think, won't saying no comment make me look guilty? In most of Australia, the police and the prosecution cannot use your silence as evidence of guilt. A jury can't be told, he didn't answer this question and therefore he's guilty, or you should assume, you can infer guilt. In fact, juries are told the exact opposite. There's a very rare exception to this legal principle, but that's a whole other video in itself. And it's safe enough to say juries and magistrates cannot take your silence as evidence of guilt. The police can do a number of things to get you to talk, and they commonly do. The most common one by far is to tell you before the interview starts, look, mate, at the moment we only have one person's side of the story. We don't have your version. So if you just tell us your version, what you say happened, that means we might not even need to go ahead and charge you. It's never what happens. They're just saying this to get you to start talking. And when you do, well, yeah, now they've got two people's side of the story, but it just so happens that both versions help them and their investigation. Yours and the victims. Police often say something like, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to worry about. It's the kind of thing a police officer might say to you as you're in the van on the way back to the station. And it gives you a false impression that you will look guilty if you don't talk. I know these tactics because I saw them used firsthand. Leave a comment below if you want a video discussing more police tactics like that. The common thread through everything I've just told you is this. A police interview is not a conversation, it's evidence gathering. Every question is designed to get you talking, because once you talk, you can't take it back. So if you or someone you love ever finds yourself sitting across from the police in an interview room, don't talk without legal advice. Say no comment and call a lawyer. If you want to know more about how the system actually works, from someone who's been on both sides of it, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.